What's up everybody and welcome to the channel. In today's video, I'm gonna give you a 2-week review on the 2024 Subaru WRX TR. Now my wife and I just got back from a trip up to Michigan and back. We drove this car quite literally 1,500 miles. I checked the trip odometer this morning and we're right at 1,500 miles to this parking lot. So we've had this car for 2 weeks, did the trip up and back. And basically, here's my thoughts on this sporty compact sedan with what it's like to live with that many miles. One of the biggest surprises was the efficiency. Now, the EPA rates this car at 26 miles per gallon on the highway. We actually got 30 mpg, which I quite honestly did not expect. We were getting well over 400 miles per tank highway driving only. So that was pretty impressive to see. This was actually a really economical car. Obviously, being a sedan, it was pretty roomy as well. So with all that said, let's hop inside. Let's go over my dislikes first and then get into the rest of the review. So going over all the dislikes with this WRX TR for our trip up and back. Some of them are gonna be a little bit nitpicky, so is what it is. But when you drive it for 1,500 miles in the course of a week or so, there's a lot of little things that you have to live with this car that you obviously find out about. So one of them is the sun visors. So you have typical sun visors up here as any car would. You can pop them over and do that. Here is my complaint. Going from North Carolina to Michigan, obviously that is a north to south trip. The sun goes east to west. Therefore, several hours of each way up and each way down, the sun is gonna be on the driver's side of the car and the passenger side. That's just nature. And when you look at the sun visor, it does not pull back or anything. That is it. There is not much coverage of this window. And of course, the sun ends up being right in this big spot. Now, all my cars, I have good window tint on them that actually blocks all the sun's heats, the UV rays, so I don't ever feel the sun. No window tint on a car with ginormous side windows and a tiny sun visor that is practically useless. I mean, you had the sun in my face the entire time. So I actually took an envelope in the glove box and stuck it up into the window to block the sun, because it was like 3 hours straight on the morning coming home where the sun is right there. And same thing going up, passenger is the same thing. So the fact that these sun visors do not extend and actually block the window was a real annoying thing. I honestly did not like that at all. That really bugged me. So I fixed that with sticking the piece of paper up there. Next thing is the screen lag. I've mentioned this in several videos of the new Subarus where I filmed these cars. The screen lag is a little annoying. So when I first go ahead and start it up, the screen turns on, you gotta wait for it to do its thing. You hit agree and sometimes nothing happens. And then sometimes the main screen takes a minute, you'll hit home and it'll freeze on you and do nothing. Climate controls are all in the screen. So sometimes you hit that, it freezes and does nothing. So that really kind of drove me crazy just a little bit, because you don't have those physical climate controls in here and the screen, you have to wait for it to do something. So I can totally agree with everybody about having climate controls with physical buttons. I did really like the temperatures that are physical buttons on here, but I would really like fan speed on it, and just a few more buttons would be nice. You know, when you review a brand new car at a dealership like we do, obviously, it's fine. You say, yeah, you'll get used to it. When you live with it for so long and so many hours, countless hours using the screen, it can get a little annoying having some lag and having to go into menus to do things. Next up, a little tiny thing is the tune icon over here. It turns tiny bits. We were listening to the Sirius XM radio on most of the trip up and back, and when I'm changing the station using this dial, you have to really think about turning it, because so many times I would turn it a couple clicks going to several stations over versus just easily clicking it. So this turner dial, I wish there were more gaps basically in between each of the physical clicks you feel. You can use the touchscreen, of course, to change your radio stations, but once again, the way this is designed, sometimes you hit channel and then it takes a second for the things to load. You can swipe over, click. It takes more time, honestly, to use the screen to change the stations than just clicking that real quick. So some of that aspects weren't my favorite, but that's kind of about it for the general stuff. Now this is the TR, this is their track ready sporty version. Had we had the GT, that would have been honestly a little bit better for this trip. Has a more fancy suspension for more comfortable driving, and it has an automatic transmission. I did drive the whole way home. However, my wife drove about 3 hours heading out there, and that was her first time driving a manual. I taught her how to drive last summer in my Supra in a parking lot, and then a year later, this week, she drove this for a good 200 miles. So I'm proud of her for being able to do that. It got a little overwhelming once we started hitting the tolls and traffic, so I just did the rest of the driving. But If it was an automatic, it would have made it just a little bit easier, but again, there are several other trim levels you can get. So more thoughts with the WRX TR. I will say it's a fun, playful car. It's nice to just drive it around. You can have some fun in it, and it's not crazy fast to where you're going to be breaking speed limits or anything, to where you can drive this car kind of on the harder side if you want to, and you're not going to go crazy. So honestly, this seemed like it'd be a really good first car. Maybe not a brand new one, of course, but the WRX platform in general seems like a really good entry-level sporty car. You get the practicality out of it, you get good safety features and technology, and it's fun to drive. And when we were on our trip, you know, it was pretty decently comfortable overall. It was very quiet. The wind noise and road noise was really good, and you had enough room in here to sprawl out a little bit. Now, some of the downfalls that we found, again, with this specific spec, these Recaro seats, they look really cool. However, honestly, they're really not that comfortable in the long term. When I say that, it's not that they're uncomfortable seats, it's just they are very stiff. And the passenger seat especially, you cannot lower the base at all. And honestly, you feel like you're sitting on a flat board. Really not a comfortable seat to be in. After an hour or so that I was in that seat, I was a little uncomfortable, and my wife, on the way back after about 4 or 5 hours, was definitely a little uncomfortable. So I wish they did a little bit more with these seats. They give you something that looks so cool. They do have the big bolsters, you know, for those harder turns and stuff like that. But they really need to make the base sink lower to where you can sink into the seat. The whole idea of a bucket seat is to be cradled inside the car. These are more, I'd say, show seats. They look really good. The function isn't quite there compared to more serious performance cars that have bucket seats where you truly sink into them. So that is a drawback. I wouldn't say these seats are really the best seats in the world to get. If you want to save a lot of money, get a normal WRX with the standard seats, honestly. They're going to be a little more comfortable, a little more padded, and probably better for longer term trips. Aside from that, though, not really a bad option to go with. Now, I found the manual pretty forgiving overall. The clutch pedal is a little heavy. Now, we didn't really hit much traffic on the way up. On the way back, we had about 2 hours worth of traffic just for no reason. One of the tolls was backed up quite a lot, and then we just had traffic because people can't drive in a straight line. And the clutch definitely gets a little heavy doing that. When I got home, my left leg was on the sore side. Let's just say I slept really good last night. Slept through the whole night because I was pretty worn out. But it's a forgiving traffic for normal driving. And again, if we were going to do this again with a WRX, the GT would have been amazing with the automatic and the better suspension. But I like how it's a forgiving enough transmission where my wife was able to drive it fine. It really wasn't all too difficult. So again, if you're new to the sports car world, new to the manuals, I think the WRX would be a really good option for you. And with the manual, I liked how when I was in slower speed, it was pretty easy to leave it in a gear and just drive slowly. You can go about 5 miles an hour in first gear without touching the throttle. So I was able to just kind of go slow without constantly clutching it. And of course, when it was downhill through the mountains, that definitely helped. But when we were on uphills, you know, obviously you got to clutch it a little bit more. But it's not the worst. There are some manuals that are a lot less forgiving to where it'd be a little bit of a challenge dealing with traffic. So this one, about what you would expect. Easier shifter in general, just the clutch got a little heavy sometimes. Now, as far as practicality, we really didn't have that much stuff with us, just a couple backpacks, a few coolers of food. So plenty of space, really no issues there. It's a roomy car in general, to where you have the headroom, the legroom, the arm room, and everything. So it's a car that you can definitely just get comfortable in the sense of space, and bring a lot of stuff with you. I wouldn't say there's any real other complaints. Obviously, this isn't the perfect car for a long road trip. Like I said, the GT would have been a little bit more ideal, but I feel like the WRX in general does give you quite a lot, and for not the most expensive thing out there, it's not that bad. And then another thing to touch base on is the pricing in general for the WRXs. They have quite a few options. So this one's like 42 something. Not the cheapest car out there, but it's certainly not as expensive as some European cars or something like that. But if you want to tone it down and get more of a basic WRX, you're pretty much going to get this car. So I wouldn't say the TR is really worth it for the typical person, unless the money just doesn't really matter. 40 grand is what it is for you. You know, it's a cool option. You do get cool looking seats. The Brembo brakes are quite nice, and the car does handle really good. We're about to take it on a mountain trip in a little bit in another video, so check that out, coming shortly. But I think the platform in general, they give you quite a lot of options, when the GT came out, given it was an automatic, I was a little underwhelmed with that at first, but now that they have the TR, which is the manual version basically, you know, I like how Subaru has given you a pretty good spectrum of this car to pick the one that's going to suit your needs and suit your taste. So, you know, seems like a good entry-level sporty car for sure, and I don't think you can complain with it at the price point. Now, do I think the TR is worth buying over the other trims? Only if you're honestly really doing the sporty driving. If you're really not doing hardcore mountain trips or track driving, I wouldn't spend the extra money on it, because the standard WRX, even just a complete base model, is gonna give you pretty much everything you're gonna want. Now, another thing I really liked is the cruise control. Now, this car does have the radar cruise control, which I didn't expect, given it has a manual transmission. It works really good. It does a great job with the distance pacing. The lane keeping and steering intervention also did a really good job, to where I could really just kind of sit back and let it do its thing. Every now and then, just wiggle the steering wheel a little bit to tell it that my hands are still on the wheel. So I like the integration of the safety features in this car. It does make for a pretty easy road trip car. And like I said, if you do tone it down and get one that is a lot less expensive compared to the TR, I think you're going to get a pretty well-rounded car with all the safety things you're going to want, and you're still going to get a fun car at the end of the day. So that's kind of my take after 1,500 miles with the WRX TR. It's a cool little car, honestly. It has a lot going for it. The long distance road trips isn't exactly this car's perfect scenario. A GT would have been really nice. My wife would have liked that a lot better. She's not the biggest fan of the manual, so it would have been quite nice to have an automatic for that trip, honestly. But I think if you are looking for a fun, affordable, sporty car that is brand new, the WRX lineup gives you a really, really good spectrum. And I think there's going to be one to fit everyone's budget and everyone's taste, depending on what you're going to do with it. But that is it then for my 1,500 mile 2-week review with this car. I don't think there's anything left. A few nitpicky complaints, yeah, but overall it seems like a pretty cool platform. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, stay tuned for plenty more content, and I'll see you all in the next video.